All right, let's talk about the Club Players Association. Anthony Moyles is with us. Good morning to you, Anthony. How are you doing?
Morning, gents.
So you guys released the results of a survey yesterday, and also two other very key bits of news about a big new signing for the CPA, and also about your plans, your very specific plans for what you want to happen next. Before we get to the bits of news, talk us through the results of the survey, because I think it fundamentally reflects in detail what a lot of people out there had kind of been feeling in the ether, but now there's concrete evidence for the number of club players who believe that Croke Park as an entity has separated itself from the rank and file membership of the GAA.
Yeah, well, I don't think, it's a massive surprise, I suppose, Ger, in the sense of, we saw the whole kind of debacle with Newbridge or Nowhere, in the weeks kind of leading up to it. And I suppose a lot of the kind of, attention around that, and probably the reaction around that, was this idea of discontent and this idea of, do the hierarchy in the GAA, are they really clued into what's happening on the ground, be it supporters or whatever it was, just GAA people. So, I expected that number to be pretty high. I didn't think it would be as high as it was from the respondents. And yeah, I suppose it just does show that club players are just saying to themselves, well, look, it's a situation where I'm continuing on this kind of, wheel, just going around and around and around every year, things being changed, chopped and changed, and all those other things that we know so much about, and we don't need to kind of keep going on about. But it certainly does show that, that the feeling is still out there, and it's probably growing even more and more, as time passes.
For anybody who missed it, what were the results of the survey? What was the general thrust of it?
Well, the 96%, as you say, with regard to being disgruntled, or not disgruntled, but feel that there's a disconnect. We kind of asked another kind of two questions, really about the season itself, whether people wanted a kind of a split season or a segmented season. So the feeling was, do club players want the kind of the situation that's been happening at the moment, where kind of April is being seen as this club month? And I think an awful lot of people would have felt, and from an awful lot of conversations we've had, that the April thing didn't work. It worked in some counties, but it didn't work in other counties. The GAA, we would feel, probably dropped the ball and had an opportunity to set it in stone and to kind of say, listen, the April thing is going to be a club month, and if you don't abide by the rules, well, then there will be sanctions. So as soon as they kind of said, well, listen, we leave it up to the individual counties, well, then individual counties, of course, ran with that. And you would probably say inter-county managers who had fixtures coming up in May decided, well, I'm not going to release fellas, or whatever it was. So, it wasn't really, before the April thing, people were saying, oh, the CPA want the April thing. That was only part of one of our, kind of plans. So it wasn't really something that we were hanging our hat on. But if it was to work, we felt that there was a requirement, obviously, to have it, that it was going to be set, and there would actually be, as I say, ramifications, to be sanctions, to be something along the lines of, that you need to try to instill this, and still give your inter-county manager plenty of time. Because let's be honest, most inter-county managers have teams now from November on. So you have November, January, December, or November, December, January, February, March. You have 5 months prior to April comes along to get your team in some kind of shape. And then you would still have a couple of weeks, obviously, and you could still actually train them during April if you needed to. So, I suppose the feeling was the question was asked, well, do you want that kind of situation again, or would you like it completely split? So in other words, that you actually have an inter-county season and then you have a club season. And definitely the not by a massive percentage, but still by a significant enough percentage, players responded in the sense of that they would rather actually their season to start, that yes, some inter-county players would be missed for some part of the season, but then essentially from your August on, when the inter-county season completely finished, your championship would start. Certainly that's one that I would personally prefer, because
so
I just think
no championship, no club championship until the inter-county season is over. So none of this, a few games in April and then everything's on hold until September.
Correct. So you'd essentially, let's say, if you were talking about, say, here in Meath, you might start training back. You might get lads out in March, Ger. You might start your kind of pre-season in March, and you do probably 4-6 weeks, and then you'd have your league matches. like in Meath, we have a thing called the Fesh Cup, which is senior teams versus intermediate teams. I'm sure there's lots of other counties. So you could have those cup competitions, and then you could build through. You might even be able to do star games within the league. That you have to have inter-county players back for, 3 or 4 games at a certain period of time. You could do that in April, for example, at the start. And then you basically have your championship set and ready to go. And obviously, if your county team gets knocked out a bit earlier than August, if they're gone, say, at the start of July, you could bring things forward a bit or set yourself a bit more room in the calendar to make sure that to ensure that there's no overlapping at all. And give, obviously, say, a dual player a bit more time off. Because at the moment, even in Meath, dual players are out. Like, there's championship matches on this Thursday, this Friday, and then the following week there's county or club or Gaelic football championship matches on. Already after, so these guys have been literally playing kind of nearly 7-8 weeks in a row. They'll end up playing. Now that's fine, but it doesn't need to be that way. And they're being pulled and dragged. So I certainly think that one of, you start in March and basically you're finished kind of, September, October, depending on how well your club championship goes.
There's a piece on the back of the Irish Independent this morning, Anthony, that says that there's still a possibility perhaps this year for the All-Ireland football and hurling finals to be pushed back to September. By the way you're talking there, it seems that the CPA wouldn't move in that direction at all. If anything, you would push them earlier.
Absolutely. I read that piece, Owen, and it's talking about, I think Martin Breheny, I think it was him who wrote that piece, was it?
Yeah.
And I think when you go back to the Super 8, he was kind of anti-Super 8 purely for, he thought that there was, well, maybe it wasn't his only reason, but certainly it was one of his reasons, that he thought that there was promotional opportunities that were going to be lost, that he felt that there was, that September was a kind of a GAA month, and that, there wasn't much other activity going on. So there wasn't, soccer, there wasn't, if it was a World Cup year, the World Cup would be finished. If it was rugby or whatever it is, if it was even racing or something like this. So he felt that was a special time. And yes, okay, you could take that view, but I think there's enough people who watch sports and watch multi-sports that I don't really truck along with that opinion. You have to bring it forward. If you're certainly going to do a season that we think, and certainly the CPA members would prefer, and it'd be interesting to see, do inter-county GPA members prefer it? Because that'll be a really interesting one if that comes out. That you will have to move those All-Irelands forward. It'll just have to happen, because if you kick them out of September, which then, some teams will have to wait September, October, and then you're back into the status quo that we've had for donkey's years.
Yeah, so let's change it. Let's see what happens. Let's move on. There's two other things.
I tell you one thing, Ger. Sorry, but it's funny. Some of those articles don't come out for as you know, they come out for a reason. Sometimes they just get put out there into the ether. I would say, and it's rolling on. Kind of going back to the conversation this week, which is happening a lot about the Super 8s. I think the GAA, I'd say, are fairly worried about the attendances and stuff, and they may see that the final, be it the All-Ireland hurling final or the All-Ireland football final especially, is really the only major spectacle that could potentially be there, where you get an 85, 90,000 people or, full capacity in Croke Park. Because most certainly, even I think in the last games, which will end up in Croke Park, there's going to be a lot of dead rubbers there. They're going to, I'll be amazed if they get anything like even the attendances they got last week, unless there's something major on the line. And even at that, I'm scratching around to see. So then, you're into a situation where you may only have one particular game of the year where Croke Park is full. And maybe this discussion about moving it into September is someone has probably raised the flag of saying, well, we need to make it like the Super Bowl. We need to make it like a major event in the calendar, and there's a bit of a build-up, maybe a 2 or 3 or 4 week period of build-up, or 3 week period of a build-up, and we, instead of cutting down the build-up, that you actually make this and you try to milk it for as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, there's loads of fixes to that, including getting rid of the provincial championships and actually using the full width of May to the end of August and having games over a regular basis. But we won't get into that right now, because there's two other things that I wanted to talk to you about. You do have a solution, and you've come with a suggested solution to the fixtures issue, and that's like not actually having a prescribed solution, but let's start with a blank sheet of paper and get all of the relevant stakeholders, and I thought very interestingly, people from outside the GAA to come along and have this conversation where everybody comes with no bias, they come with their own ideas, and you write those down and try and come with an agreed solution that everybody can get behind?
Well, you know, in every walk of life, Jared, like, I mean, if you want to go get advice on something that you're starting out, be it a business, you know, whatever it is, generally you will seek, or you should seek, some kind of an outside consultant or an outside influence who will come at it from a completely different point of view, and who doesn't necessarily have skin in the game, you know, understands, yes, the GAA and how it works, but is not involved in, shall we say, GAA administration, or involved in county boards, or involved in any of that stuff. So, as you say, has no real baggage with them. But they can come in and say, well, actually, you know, yes, this is the best solution, or I would back this, or whatever it is, or that has to change, or whatever it is. And that is 100% required. Like, I mean, you know, at the moment, there's these fixture analysts who are going out to the different counties. So every county would have a fixture analyst. And the idea there is that they would sit down and they would observe how the fixtures in the clubs went for the year. So they'd sit there and say, oh, actually, yeah, the clubs worked, you know, the club championship fixtures in Kildare worked fairly well. There wasn't that many stoppages, But, you know, most of those people, and okay, maybe that's it, maybe that's too strong of a statement, but I would suspect that a number of those people are people who are already known to the county board, or who have been put into that role, you know, by a specific person to do that role, albeit, yes, they're doing it probably as honestly and as forthrightly as they can, but there has to be a bias there, you know. So if you got someone who comes in and just basically throws a very cold eye look at the whole thing and says, okay, we need to sit down, we need to absolutely take people from different walks of life, people from within the GAA, people from outside the GAA, we sit down with the blank canvas and we say, right, where do we start here? You know, you get your blueprints, you get your, we're not saying about the CPA, what we've decided, or we have down, what Liam Griffin and Derek Cavan and the boys have put down is the panacea. But there's reams and reams and reams. You get fellas on Twitter there saying, this is what I think the championship should be like, this is what I think. But until you actually sit down and you overlay the thing, and you sit down with a complete blank canvas, this incremental change of changing this, pushing the All-Irelands forward, back, up, down, in, out, it's an absolute disaster. And you have to start with the blank canvas. And I honestly think that, you know, Tom Ryan and the new president, Horan, will be, I think, hopefully, you know, kind of, you know, partial to that, because I think they will feel that this is the way to go. You know, we've had a number of conversations with them. They have been very, very positive conversations, I have to say. You know, and the lads have been very, very positive about the requirement. They understand there is a requirement for it. And hopefully that's the way to do it. Because I think if you just go with the CCCC and, you know, you try to fix it from within, I think it's clouding your judgment, and I also think it's closing your mind to the possibilities that may be out there. And again, as I say, to, you know, some third parties who will actually say to you, that's not right. Well,
look, I mean, to echo the point, it was interesting to see that you've appointed Joan Keogh to the organisation. You might tell us about her involvement with the GAA, who themselves have gone outside when they needed to make the most important appointment potentially in the history of the GAA. They themselves looked outside for somebody to help them with that process, and now you guys have got her involved with you.
Yeah, well, Joan is a lady that I've known for a number of years from business circles, but she's a Wexford lady originally, so she knows Liam Griffin really well. And Joan has, you know, obviously had conversations with Liam over various different things. They know each other well. I think their families know each other very well. So she was intrigued at what the CPA were trying to do. She's heavily involved with Kilmacud Crokes, as you probably know, and you know, she's obviously steeped in it. You know, I think her daughter plays on the Dublin Camogie team, so she's a lady who wanted to get involved and obviously wanted to kind of try to, you know, rectify a situation that she saw happening, or at least help. And when you say, you know, outside help, you know, it was good for us first of all, to get a female representation on the executive, of course, of the CPA, but also to get her obviously her intelligence, her desire, you know, her acumen as a business lady, and obviously her passion for the GAA. So it was great for us to get her on board. You know, and yes, she was. It was kind of like, and by the by, you know, it was kind of nearly not because of it, but just it was a situation that she was obviously involved in the selection committee for the new DG. So she was asked to come in. I think by maybe John Costello, maybe said that she should come in and come onto the panel. And obviously the GAA, to be fair to them, decided yes that they wanted to bring someone outside in, which was a good move by them. So it shows that, you know, that the GAA are open to this, and I would, you know, hope and feel that by even doing that for the DG job, that they saw the benefit of doing it, and hopefully they would say, well, listen, there is a benefit of bringing someone from outside the circle in, so maybe we need to apply the same rules for the fixtures.
Yeah, well, hopefully it has a knock-on impact when you all go to eventually, hopefully, have this forum that you're suggesting with the blank sheet of paper. Anthony, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
No bother, lads. Talk to you.